There are some characters who it's shocking not to see in Thunderbolts, given the comic book origins of the team. The original group was brought together under the command of Baron Helmut Zemo way back in 1997. He took the name of Citizen V and had originally brought the group together under villainous intentions, hoping to fill the void left by the Avengers and Fantastic Four following their supposed deaths. When his plans were finally revealed, the team mostly turned against him, though he would eventually reform the group. It's a bit of a confusing story, but the point is that Zemo is very much tied to the group in the comics, leading many to assume he'd take part in the big screen lineup, or at least make an appearance. According to Thunderbolts co-writer Eric Pearson, there was potentially some Zemo in an earlier draft of the screenplay. However, even that was supposedly just a stinger of some sort, and not placement within the actual team. Pearson told ScreenRant that the premise of Thunderbolts negated the need for Zemo's participation, but we could still see him taking part in the proceedings. His placement in the MCU, having been reprimanded to the raft at the end of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, meant that he would be pretty easy to track down by Valentina Allegra de Fontaine if she had so desired. Unfortunately, the thought doesn't seem to have crossed her mind, and so the villain of Captain America Civil War was left out of the team building. As it stands, Zemo is still on the raft, and so it's possible that he could be brought in as a future member of the Thunderbolts if the team is ever brought back. However, since the name was based on a Little League team and promptly got rebranded as the New Avengers, it could be that Thunderbolts the film is one and done. Still, the comic book version has had seemingly dozens of variations, and so perhaps the future still holds some opportunity for Zemo's take on the group, especially with Thunderbolts being a critical and box office success. Then there's Emil Blonsky, aka Abomination, whose biggest detraction in becoming a member of the big screen Thunderbolts would have to be his control over his powers, as seen in She-Hulk. Despite not being a major part of the MCU since his debut in The Incredible Hulk, he is a particularly overpowered character, having held his own for the most part against the titular Big Green Giant. This would have required a hefty rewrite of what would become Thunderbolt's screenplay, but it would have also given us a more interesting battle against Sentry and the Watchtower. No one was terribly surprised by Robert Reynolds taking down the likes of Bucky Barnes and John Walker, but it would have been a grand demonstration of his abilities if he easily took down a Hulk-level threat. Beyond that, Blonsky also never appeared in the comic book team, but that seems like neither here nor there as far as the logic for the big screen team up goes. One name that you might have never considered for Thunderbolts, but who we think could have worked perfectly given the right introduction, is Namor the Submariner, as previously seen in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. He's not an obvious choice, but he would have brought a little extra something that wasn't there in Thunderbolts. Like Ghost, John Walker, and Taskmaster, he was previously a villain who was defeated in a major MCU project. Him forming an alliance with Valentina is a bit of a stretch, but he's been shown as someone capable of making small sacrifices and concessions in order to get his way. As such, it's plausible that he could have made the mistake of working with Valentina in order to push his own agenda. Like Blonsky, he also would have added some superpowers to the lineup without coming anywhere close to countering the might of Sentry. Add to that, Namor is actually a member of the Thunderbolts in an upcoming iteration of the comic. Again, not really a prerequisite for the big screen team, but notable nonetheless. But really, it's the more street-level heroes and anti-heroes that one would expect on this version of the Thunderbolts. Being a group that predominantly punches and shoots, it would have been interesting to see Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, show up as part of the team. He was briefly a member in the comics, but that's a pretty small part of the character's history. His primary reason for being a member of this particular crew would be his interactions with the rest of the team, who are far more quippy than the Punisher. This could have led to a lot of great contrasting moments between John Walker and Frank Castle, or even with the Jolly Pro team dynamic brought in by Red Guardian. Beyond that, we'll just take any excuse to see more of Jon Bernthal's take on the character. Similar to Punisher is Moon Knight. He has no real superpowers, but is a master of hand-to-hand combat and the use of various weapons. He's also got a pretty serious side, which is balanced out by his multiple personalities. These varying characteristics could have proven to be a strong addition to the big screen Thunderbolts. He was never a member in the comics, but as we've already seen, that's not really a prerequisite for this iteration. He was last seen in his Jake Lockley altar committing a little good old-fashioned murder at the end of Moon Knight Season 1, and since then has been MIA in the MCU. This gives him plenty of room to have been written into Valentina's employ, perhaps even with just one of his alters taking on the job, which in turn could have led to some pretty funny, confusing situations for the rest of his alters. Considering that the Thunderbolts eventually become the new Avengers, it would have perhaps made sense to include an original member of the iconic team. Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, perfectly fits the bill. In addition to being an Avenger, he was also a member of the Thunderbolts in the comics, having shown up first in Thunderbolts number 21 back in 1998. He would eventually lead the team in an effort to aid them in becoming a legitimate superhero team, as he also started off his career as a criminal. Beyond that though, he's literally another character who punches and shoots, albeit with a bow and arrow. Something that was briefly an element of the big screen team up until Taskmaster was unceremoniously killed off in the first act. He wouldn't have done a whole lot in battling Sentry, but it would have been a nice change of pace from the other brawlers on the team. And hey, if Jeremy Renner wasn't available, there's also his protege from the Hawkeye TV series, Kate Bishop, who even has a previously explored friendship with Yelena Belova. The only issue with her is that, as seen in the Marvels, she's being actively recruited by Kamala Khan, though we'll see where that plot thread actually winds up. Fellow Hawkeye TV show Alum Maya Lopez, aka Echo, would have also been a perfect fit, perhaps more so than Clint. She previously helmed her own TV series, appropriately titled Echo, wherein she gained a few powers to aid her in future superheroics. Like the rest of the Thunderbolts, she also comes from a criminal background and could have easily been written into the employment of Miss DeFontaine. This recruitment would have also provided even more diversity to the team, not just because of her Native American heritage, but by including a deaf character. This diversity wouldn't just be beneficial to the appearance of the team as a ragtag group of varying elements, but also would have brought another dynamic to how the group communicated. It would have also been fascinating to see her inner darkness personified while in the Void's grasp. She's got a lot of baggage, and that seems like the biggest draw for this group of Thunderbolts. Finally, while there are a number of non-Punisher characters from the Netflix era of the MCU that could have joined up with the Thunderbolts, the most obvious to us has to be Elektra Natchios. The former girlfriend of Daredevil is a formidable hit woman and was even a member of the comic book lineup under the leadership of Red Hulk. She's also very much missing in action, as though she was buried under Midland Circle at the end of the Defenders, her body was never found. This makes Thunderbolts a perfect method of bringing her back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and debuting her badassery on the big screen alongside the likes of John Walker, a fellow Marvel TV alum whom we could imagine her sparring with both verbally and physically. Of course, there are more characters who could have shown up in Thunderbolts, including Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and Shang-Chi. Who would you have liked to have seen make the team? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for watching Screen Rant.